All right, guys, I got more on the Uvalde police. It just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. By the way, I mentioned this yesterday. I would love it if somebody did an opinion poll on the Uvalde police. Ask the American people, do you have positive or negative feelings towards the Uvalde police? I guarantee you they would have like an 8% approval rating. It would, in no way, shape, or form would it go over 20%. People would despise the Uvalde police because, again, every single day we somehow learn things that are worse and worse and worse. So on Fox News here, they say Uvalde police officers drove by suspect, missed chance to shoot him before rampage. Officer with an AR-15 style weapon hesitated to fire upon the school shooter out of concern he would hit a child. Now, by the way, we also learned from one of the parents who ran in there to save their kids that the cops weren't even inside. They weren't even inside. They lied and said, oh, we got him cornered and we're in here. They weren't even inside. The other thing is we learned that one of the doors to the classroom was unlocked. And they just didn't even try to open it. I'm telling you, every day we learn stuff that's worse and worse and worse. But look at this. This is maybe the worst part. So this is in Vice. Uvalde hires private law firm to argue it doesn't have to release school shooting public records. Excuse you? Some of the records relating to the Robb Elementary School shooting could be highly embarrassing, you don't say, involve emotional and mental distress, and are, quote, not of legitimate concern to the public, the lawyers argue. You can't make this stuff up if you try. The brazenly idiotic arguments they're making. They say here, the city of Uvalde and its police department are working with a private law firm to prevent the release of nearly any record related to the mass shooting at Robb Elementary School in which 19 children and 2 teachers died. According to a letter obtained by Motherboard in response to a series of public information requests we made, the public records Uvalde is trying to suppress include body camera footage, photos, 911 calls, emails, text messages, criminal records, and more. That's unreal. That's unreal. Now, wait until you hear the number. I didn't read it yet, I don't think. Yeah. Wait until you hear the number of things that they're blocking. There's all these different requests. Hey, release this, release this, release this. Watch this. The city has not voluntarily released any information to a member of the public. The city's lawyer, Cynthia Trevino, who works for the private law firm Denton, Navarro, Rocha, Bernal, and Zetch, they gotta make that name shorter, dog, wrote in a letter to Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. The city wrote the letter asking Paxton for a determination about what information is required to release to the public, which is standard practice in Texas. Paxton's office will eventually rule which of the city's arguments have merit and will determine which, if any, public records it is required to release. The letter makes clear, however, that the city and its police department want to be exempted from releasing a wide variety of records, in part because it is being sued, in part because some of the records could include highly embarrassing information, in part because some of the information is not of legitimate concern to the public, in part because the information could reveal methods, techniques, and strategies for preventing and predicting crime. No, you did the opposite of that. You didn't do anything that would have prevented the crime. In part because some of the information may cause or may regard emotional and mental distress, and in part because its response to the shooting is being investigated by the Texas Rangers, the FBI, and the Uvalde County District Attorney. The letter explains that Uvalde has at least one in-house attorney whose communications it is trying to prevent from public release, and yet it is using outside private counsel to deal with a matter of extreme importance and public interest. Uvalde City Government and its police department did not immediately respond to a request for comment from Motherboard. The city says that it has received 148 separate public records requests, including several from Motherboard, and has lumped all of them together, making a broad legal argument as to why it should not be required to respond to many of them. So do you understand what they're doing? They're not treating each, public information request as its own thing and saying, look, okay, that we'll release, this we won't, this is too sensitive, whatever. They're saying, no, all 148, we're lumping it into one, and we're saying, no. Okay, I now think they're hiding something that is even worse than we can imagine. I now think it's possible one of the Uvalde police officers murdered a kid, killed a kid. Because everything we've learned to this point is as bad as it gets. The only thing I can imagine that would make it even worse is if they literally killed a kid or multiple kids themselves. That's the only thing I could think of. Because this truly is astonishing. I've never seen anything like this before. Earlier this week, Motherboard reported on a similar letter sent to Paxton by the Texas Department of Public Safety, which wanted to suppress body camera footage because it could expose weaknesses in police response to crimes and that criminals could exploit. I love that. The guys. So there's a lot of debate around, hey, should police officers wear body cameras? And some people have made the argument, even people on the left, like, look, it doesn't work. So it's kind of a moot point anyway. No, the reason why it quote unquote doesn't work is not because the body cameras and the footage. It's because they like suppress the footage after the fact. They bury the footage. They hide it. They find ways to get it dismissed. So really what we need is not just body cameras on all police officers, but we need very strict laws, maybe federal laws that mandate that, if you suppress it or if you hide it, then that in and of itself is punishable by like 5 years in prison. So, that's the problem. The problem is everything that happens after the footage is recorded. Not, that we have footage. The fact that we have the footage is a positive thing. It gives us the opportunity to maybe hold these people accountable. The main seeming weakness in the Uvalde response was that police, in violation of standard policy and protocol, refused to risk their lives to protect children, you don't say. For example, the city and its police department argue that it should be exempted from releasing police officer training guides, policy and procedure manuals, shift change schedules, security details, and blueprints of secured facilities, because that could be used to decipher methods, techniques, and strategies for preventing and predicting crime. Now, this is a total red herring, guys, because the Uvalde Police Department did do training for an event exactly like this. They did do that. They had it on video. But now after the fact, they're like, oh, we can't release it for reasons X, Y, and Z. The criminals might know what we're going to do. But the reality is you didn't do anything, and that's the problem. You didn't follow the procedure. You didn't follow the process. Nobody wanted to risk their life for a single second to save innocent, unarmed babies inside the classroom. That's the problem. The Uvalde Police Department and Texas Department of Public Safety have been pilloried by the press and the public for standing in the hallway while a gunman killed children. They weren't even in the hallway, by the way. They were outside, against standard protocol, and for preventing parents from entering the building to save their children. The letter also argues that the department should be exempted from releasing body camera footage simply because it could be information considered to be confidential by law, either constitutional, statutory, or by judicial decision. It is impossible to say what records in particular the city and police are referring to in many parts of the letter. For example, it says it cannot release an individual's criminal history because it would be not of legitimate concern to the public, because it could be highly embarrassing, and because it would violate their common law right to privacy. I don't even know what they're talking about here. Are they talking about, the criminal records of the officers? I don't understand. What are they talking about here? They say, but the letter does not talk about who the records would be about, why they wouldn't be relevant to the public, or why they would be highly embarrassing. Quote, they claim that the compilation of individuals' criminal history is highly embarrassing information, which is a strange cover. The embarrassing information is the inept police response. That's damn right, said Christopher Schneider, a professor of sociology at Brandon University, who studies police body cameras and the disclosure of footage from them, told Motherboard, noting that suspects' criminal histories are released by the police all the time without anyone having requested them. So in other words, I think what they're saying here is when it's a criminal who the cops are going after and they want to make them look bad, then they release it. But when they're trying to cover their own ass, they're like, no, this isn't in the public interest. Quote, they have no problem using information like that against individuals of the public. The information disclosure needs to go both ways if that's the case. Disciplinary or criminal records for members of the police, for example, so it is that, would be obviously relevant public information in a case in which the police response has been highly criticized. It's rather ripe to say any of this is not of legitimate public concern. And the whole country is trying to figure out how to not allow this to happen again. This is a relatively common sort of argument, but it shows yet again that the deck is stacked against the public disclosure of public records when they are inconvenient or embarrassing to the police. That is exactly the point right there. They rig the system in their favor in 47 different ways. They rig the system in their favor. So they misuse and abuse and twist whatever sort of disclosure rules and laws they can to protect their asses in a situation where the entire country is saying F you to the Uvalde police, and rightfully so. Let's see. I think there was one part at the end that I wanted to talk about. Let's start here. Schneider says that lumping together all 148 public records requests and asking for a legal ruling on everything at once seems like a tactic to prevent the release of anything and everything, you don't say. Quote, it appears that they're conflating all the information requests as a justification to not release the stuff we should be seeing. If it's an officer's email to his wife, yeah, we don't need to see this. But the body-worn camera footage is of concern. They're conflating all of this information together to suppress the legitimate stuff. In his research, Snyder said that body-worn cameras often do not do what they're supposed to do, which is hold police accountable to the public. This is because public records laws are often written in such a way as to provide wide latitude to police to decide what the public actually gets to see and allows them to regain control of the narrative when it's convenient for them. Quote, "It's not a coincidence. Journalists run into this problem of not being able to obtain body camera footage over and over again," Schneider said. "The law is by design. The privacy rules are by design to make it absolutely as difficult as possible to release the information." So again, the problem is not the body cameras on police officers. The problem is the disclosure laws around that after the fact. How they're basically in charge and they get to determine what you see and what you don't see. And anything that's embarrassing to them, they hide. And anything that makes their case, they release. So here we have a situation. I'm going to say it again. We've already learned so many things about this response where, people should want the entire Uvalde Police Department in prison. Everybody should want them in prison. I think that's the most common sense thing anybody's ever said ever. But the fact that they're hiding even more leads me to believe there's something really dark that they don't want released. And I think it may be that one of the officers, or maybe multiple of the officers, killed at least a kid, maybe multiple kids. For real, lock these guys up. Charge them with negligence. Do something. And then you have the Attorney General in Texas going out there saying, he was asked, what would you say to the parents? And he said something like, God always has a plan. God has a plan? You're going to say that to somebody who lost their child? Man, sick stuff. Absolutely disgusting. 40% of the Uvalde budget goes to cops, and they sat around and did nothing as kids were slaughtered, and they held back the parents, and they tased some of them, and they handcuffed some of them. And they just sat there as a slaughter happened, ignored 911 calls. No, there's so much information that they're suppressing, which shows beyond any doubt that all of them should be locked up. There's no doubt about it. Lord only knows what's on those 911 calls. Lord only knows what's in those text messages. Lord only knows what's on the body camera footage. Maybe it's even worse than we thought in terms of, they handcuffed all of the parents or 50% of the parents or whatever. I don't know, but obviously they're up to no good. That's clear. If you want to see me and Crystal Ball interview legends like Noam Chomsky, Cornel West, and more, subscribe to Crystal Kyle and Friends on Substack. $5 a month gets you the video version a day early. Remember, we take 0 ad dollars for this podcast. Or you can sign up on Substack for free and get the audio version a day later. Link in the video description box below.